This is a TalkStation original podcast.
On this week's episode of the Paper Boys podcast, JJ Smith and I interview Scotland County head football coach Richard Baily and Pinecrest athletic director Jeff Hewitt. The two East Carteret alums talk about their undefeated football teams playing each other, their coaching histories, and growing up in Beaufort. It all starts right now on the Paper Boys podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Paper Boys podcast. I'm JJ Smith.
And I'm Zack Nally.
We're reporters with the Carteret County News-Times. We're joined as always by our faithful producer Ross Caraway. And this week we are also joined by a couple of East Carteret boys doing their things out in the Sandhills. That would be Scotland County football coach Richard Baily and Pinecrest baseball coach and athletic director Jeff Hewitt. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having us, JJ.
Well, we always wanted to have Richard on, and we always wanted to have Jeff on, and we thought we'd probably have them on separately because with their resumes, they're definitely deserving of their own guest spot on the podcast. But we thought it'd be cool to have them on this week because there's some big goings on out there in the Sandhills. If you go on Max Preps, they'll tell you that there are 190 high school games going to be played in the state of North Carolina this Friday. Only one of them is a matchup of two undefeated teams.
Wow. That
would be Scotland County at 7-0 and Pinecrest at 7-0. Richard, what's the hype been like this week in Laurinburg?
It's definitely a big game. It's got our attention. They've got the best of us the last about 5 times, which kind of sticks in my craw a little bit. But they really got it going at Pinecrest, and it's quite a change from about 20 years ago. They were getting ready to do away with the program, and now they got one of the best programs in the state of North Carolina. So it's a big game. Our community's up for it. Hopefully our players will be.
Jeff, Richard mentioned you've won 5 in a row. When he started at Scotland, he won 6 in a row versus Pinecrest. Now y'all have won 5 in a row. I'm sure you like to see Pinecrest even up his record at 6-6.
Absolutely. Anything that Richard does, when we look back 6 years ago, I remember walking the field with him just as, an athletic director and a head football coach. And, the standard was Scotland County football. Richard does a great job. And our community's really rallied around our program and our school. And, it's unbelievable what a football program can do to a high school. You start the season off or you start the year off here at school, and you just get the buzz down in the courtyard and in the classroom. So we're really excited about Friday night and heading to Laurinburg.
Well, Richard mentioned about how there was a time where you didn't look like maybe you continue on with the football program. What's been the turnaround?
Well, the turnaround was getting a head football coach in here. Chris Metzger did an unbelievable job for 10 years and slowly but surely built a program that was known around the state. So we owe a lot to Chris Metzger. He's now at Montgomery Central building a program there and had an opportunity to go after a guy that we thought was one of the best football coaches in the state of North Carolina, Nick Edens. And Coach Edens has just done an unbelievable job and just continuing to build our program. One of the things that we as athletic directors have to do is put in our fall eligibility summary. And, one of the things you can look at, the numbers of programs in the state, and ours is right up there at the top with Cardinal Gibbons. And just the turnout, we've got 90 kids playing JV football. We've got 76 playing varsity football. Wow. So it is a sport here that has turned around, and we owe it all to coaches like Chris Metzger and Nick Edens.
I mentioned that Richard and Jeff were both worthy of their own guest spots on our podcast. I'll give you just a quick bio on both of them. Richard's been at Scotland. This is his 12th season. He's won over 120 games, so you do the math on what averaging they're doing every year there in Laurinburg. 6 conference championships. Before that, he had 12 seasons at Jack Britt. He helped start that program from scratch. Won 119 games there. Again, you do the math on average wins per season. Conference champions 4 times. At Pinecrest, Jeff had 24 seasons. The last 18, they have been rolling. They've won 20 games 8 times in the past 18 years. Just missed out on 20 wins 4 other times with 19 wins. In the last 18 years, they've had 9 conference championships. He's been named Conference Coach of the Year 10 times. Both of them have even done stuff on a state or regional or national level. Jeff represented U.S. national team in the Pan Am Games. Richard has coached in the Shrine Bowl, the East-West All-Star Game, the U.S. Army All-American Bowl. That's a couple of alumni that have been doing pretty good out in the world. Jeff, have you been keeping up with Richard over the years?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Anytime that I get a chance to talk to someone, I don't know that many people know this, but Richard coached me and on Post 99 down there, and I remember riding some games with Richard, and just as a young player back in the day, you've got several people that you would look up to, and there's so many coaches there. You guys are around Cecil Lilly all the time, Chuck Lewis, but you put those guys together, and you've got coaches that you want to look up to, and Richard was always the guy that certainly as a young baseball player I looked up to.
How about you, Richard? You've been keeping up with Jeff these past
Absolutely. Jeff and me go way back. Like you said, he's dating me a little bit. I did coach him. I want people to know I was only like 22 years old when I was coaching that Legion team, and Jeff was like an 18-year-old senior, so I'm not that much older than Jeff. But, we grew up in the same town. We hung around the same people. Me and him are very close to Gary Chadwick, and we played for Chuck Lewis and Cecil and all those guys he mentioned. And so we have a lot in common, and we have always – I'm Jeff's biggest fan, and he was very humble when he thought about the program coming back. Jeff's done a tremendous job over there as athletic director. Their facilities have become second to none. They got a jumbotron now. They got a AstroTurf field. Their baseball field is incredible. Everything he's doing, their team rooms, their locker rooms, he's created an environment as the athletic director that people want to go to Pinecrest High School. It's a very good academic school. Obviously, it's a nice place to live. But Jeff has had a big hand in what they've done there. And he was being not only as a baseball coach, but as an athletic director. But I've always admired Jeff. We talk about everything from fishing to going out in the boat to golfing. I almost wish I hadn't. I was one of the ones that kind of recommended Nick Edens to be his coach. We had called and talked about coaches around the state, and I have a lot of respect for Nick, and his name had come up in conversations. And obviously, I wish Jeff would have hired a moron, but he didn't do that. He hired a really good football coach, and so I got to deal with Nick and Pinecrest. But without a doubt, I've always admired Jeff, continue to do so, and he's a great representative of East Carteret, but also just Pinecrest High School.
We're going to talk about a lot of similarities y'all have. There's 4 or 5 that really stand out. Do I have my math right? Did y'all just miss each other at East Carteret?
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
Yep.
He was an 8th grader when I was a senior. I always tell him if Brian Taylor could have been one more year older, we'd have won a state championship, because Jeff's team could pitch, but they couldn't hit their way out of a paper bag. And we could
really
hit,
could.
but didn't have really good pitching. Right. So if we could have had Brian, we might have made it happen.
Wow.
Heck, I would have even took Jeff as a 9th grader. Jeff was pretty daggone good as a 9th grader, too.
And also, correct me if I'm wrong, outside of the last few years, you've competed at the 4A level as a coach the entire time, right, Richard?
As a head coach.
Yeah.
As an assistant coach, I started off at little small 1A programs and kind of built my way up after my first 9 years. But, as a head coach, I've been in the 4A programs. We're now 3A. Like Jeff was talking about, they've got all these numbers. We got lowly 38 on our varsity. We just try to show up and play with what we got.
And Jeff, Pinecrest been 4A the whole time you've been there?
We have.
Yeah.
We've been 4A, and we've consistently grown here in the Southern Pines, Pinehurst area. I remember one year when they told us that the freshman class, I think, was coming in at 380 kids. I talked to our principal the other day because my daughter's a senior, and we're filling out the Common App, and just one of the things we wanted to know was how many was going to graduate or be in her senior class. And right now there's 510, so we're consistently growing here in the Sandhills.
Well, the question I wanted to ask both of you, we'll start with you, Jeff, is, you both grow up in Beaufort. That's a small town. You go to a small school like East Carteret. Now you're both competing for the most part in your head coaching careers at the highest level that the state offers. What's it like competing against the big boys in 4A?
Well, first of all, everything that, when I grew up at East, and I'm sure that Richard would tell you the same thing, we only knew what we knew. We would play West, and we didn't know that they were, a little bit bigger school than us. You just competed and you got after it. And then, I got here. I had an opportunity to come here, and I tell everybody, my wife Tiffany's from Pinehurst, and, I thank the Lord for her every day because there's no telling where I would be right now. But to come here in 1996 and get the job here in 99 and be able to coach here, I tell everybody, it's really the only thing I know. Bell rings and there's kids everywhere. The courtyard's packed. We're up to 2,400 students, close to 2,400 students now. Honestly, it's like a small college. But with that, it's such a beautiful school. We've got the richest of the rich right behind our baseball field here. Is the Mid-South Club right across the street, Pinehurst, number 9. But then we also have kids that are coming from the projects and just a melting pot of our students here at Pinecrest High School. It is a beautiful thing. Really, it's been a place that I wanted to be from the get-go. And I thought, honestly, when I came out, I was going over to Union Pines. I was a JV baseball coach there for a year, and I thought that was the place for me, and position just didn't open up, and I had the opportunity here. And we have had some other opportunities, I'll be honest with you. One time, the athletic director at Richmond called me, and we met halfway and talked about the position at Richmond County, and man, I just felt like I was cheating on my wife. Something wasn't right. This has always just been the home for us.
Hi, folks. Bob Lowry here, and this episode of the Paper Boys Podcast is brought to you by the Carteret County Speedway.
It's the Night of Champions at Carteret County Speedway. Green flag drops at 4 p.m. this Saturday the 14th. We'll crown our track champions in their division. Come meet Jeremy Mayfield, plus the Grand National Super Series and the USAC Eastern Midget Championships will be crowned. Tickets $20, kids 10 and under free. Military discount with ID, VIP, trackside camping, and Moonshiners Restaurant, all at Carteret County Speedway. The Night of Champions this Saturday. Green flag drops at 4. Details on Facebook and tickets at CarteretSpeedway.com.
I'm Cecil Lilly, and you're listening to the Paper Boys Podcast.
Well, I'll tell you, one thing I encourage everybody to do is to coach at a small level first, because my beginnings were at the 1A level, and you do everything. You mow the grass, you do the weight room, you line the fields, you wash the jerseys. You're doing everything, and you learn a little bit of a work ethic, and so I feel blessed that I started at a small school, and I played. One thing I learned playing for Chuck Lewis, and Jeff's the same way because his field's always immaculate. I learned early on that, you're going to keep your place looking right. And I learned field maintenance and all that kind of stuff from Mr. Chuck when I was growing up. But, it's been a blessing coming, being in big programs. I've been blessed to, coaching 6 state championship games, so I've seen it at the biggest level on the biggest stage, and there's nothing like those Friday night lights or when we play Richmond. I told somebody we get to play in a state championship game every year, because when we play Richmond County, it's turn the light off on your way out of town if you're playing away, because everybody's going to that game. And there's been some years we've literally played in front of 10, 12, 13,000 people here at Pate Stadium, wow, which is unprecedented in the state of North Carolina. And to be honest with you, COVID kind of did away with a little bit of that vibe the last couple of years. I'm really hoping this Friday night that the Pinecrest game looks like one of those 2017, 2018 games where we have 7, 8, 9,000 people in the stands. And obviously, unlike Jeff, who talked about have the richest of the rich near his school and some very poor communities, we're pretty much poor, across the board. And our community really comes together around football. They're very passionate about it. I love, like Jeff said, how much it brings the school together. And literally, everybody talks about football. I always kid around. Our communities, they're behind me, win or tie. You notice they ain't behind me real good when we lose. But I'm sorry, the school bell's ringing. But
oh, that's all right.
But yeah, they're very passionate about football, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I definitely don't want to be somewhere where they don't care about it, and they're willing to financially back it here in our county. And, we were one of the first ones to have a jumbo trial. Now everybody's got them. I told somebody we were the poorest county in the state, but somehow we found enough money to get a jumbotron. So we might have our priorities a little messed up, but we definitely support football in Scotland County.
You've got a couple unique things going for you there, Richard. You are probably, I don't know what the number is, you probably count one hand. You're the only high school in that county. What's it like coaching a football team in a place like that?
Yeah, it's great. It's one of the reasons I left Jack Britt, which I loved. I got my start there. I owe so much to that community in Cumberland County. I met my wife there, which was a blessing for me, and she's now the principal here at the high school. But it's a big advantage. I don't have to worry about kids coming in, coming out. Everybody wants to play for Scotland County football in our community. And I don't have to worry about anybody's loyalties being split. Now, one thing I learned quickly, though, is it's like West Virginia now. Everybody's related to everybody here. And so I better not say something about so-and-so because it's probably somebody's brother's cousin, uncle, grandfather's nephew or something. And so it is a close-knit community. Everything, like I said, revolves around, Friday night and how well we do, and around water coolers on Saturday and in the church pews on Sunday. People are talking about Scotland football.
The other unique thing about the area you're coaching in, you look up the demographics and on the population of North Carolina. I think there's only 8 counties in the state that has a larger black population than a white population. You're not one of those counties, but you're close. You're about 50-50, and then you add on the large Native American population you got there, and it's definitely a diverse county you're coaching in.
Yeah, definitely so. When I first came here, it's amazing how much has changed just in my 12 years. We were probably about 40% white when I came here, and the other 60% was divided between African American and Native American. Now we're only about 27% white, and about the other 73% is divided about 60-40 between African American and Native Americans. But I'm telling you, we really, as a racial community, our races get along really well. Our players get along really well. We very much intermingle with one another in our communities. Most of the churches I've been to in our community are very diverse. And like I said, our friends, our groupings amongst our players, and even in our school building, we very much get along with one another, which I think, like Jeff was saying, is a beautiful thing. It's great to see people in a community looking past the racial makeup and just being able to get along as human beings. And we do that quite well here at Scotland.
I'm going to give you both a compliment, but you're not going to like it. Just about every baseball coach in the state would probably say this about you, Jeff, and I think about every football coach in the state would say this about you, Richard. You are probably the best coaches in the state to not win a state title.
Yeah, I've heard that a few times. Somebody told me they said I'm the Marv Levy of high school football. And I said, well, you only lost 4. I lost 6 of them. And I tell people all the time, there probably ain't many people in the United States that can say they lost 6 state championship games. But then my buddies kind of remind me, well, there's probably not many people that have played in 6, and that makes me feel a little better, but not a lot better. But I'm telling you, I'm almost to the end of my coaching career. Jeff's probably going to get him one in the next couple of years.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, the wound is still fresh here. A couple of years ago, we were in the state championship game, and you work from 1999 to a couple of years ago. We get there, and when we get there, we played the number 3 team in the nation in Providence. And the funny thing is, Danny Hignite is the head baseball coach at Providence, and they had 2 number 1. Well, we had 2 draft picks within that. One we ended up going to South Carolina. One ended up going to a community college in Florida. But, you work hard. Danny Hignite, he was one of my assistants on the USA team that went to Venezuela. So, just trying to be around, just being around our kids and working our butts off and trying to get there. When you finally get there, man, there's nothing like it. I'm looking at a picture right now with us all standing on the line for the national anthem and the stadium packed. And, that's why we do what we do. But what I'm coming to is the back end of our careers is, man, the state championships for me are the relationships that you build throughout the course of the year, and the kids that go on and they do what they do. And We've got a kid right now at East Carolina that I think is going to do great things. And, that kid led us to the state championship. And Coach Cliff Godwin's got a good one in Colby Wallace. And I think Richard could probably say the same thing. There's wins much greater than the state championship.
Absolutely. That's one thing I've always said is I don't think God cares how many state championships I've won, but I think he might care how many lives I've impacted and how many kids are becoming good fathers and husbands and, good citizens. I think he might care about that, but I don't think he really cares how many state championships I win.
Jeff, what did that mean?
No doubt.
What did that mean for your community there in 2022? You lead that team to a state championship. It had been since 1979 since Pinecrest had been in a state title.
Yeah, we had heard about the 1979 team, and one of the things that I do is I try to each year present Patriot baseball by the numbers to our program because I want our kids to know what they're playing for. I want them to know what they represent, and they know about that 1979 team and who played on that team. Mike Annell, who went down to UNCW and played there, and Tim Maples, who got drafted and played with the Giants organization. And so it was huge for our community. My assistant coach, Roger Woolard, who had worked and honestly helped me build the program that we have now, had just passed away with COVID. And his son was a freshman, JC, who has been a little rugrat, running around the field house, running around the field since day one, started in left field for us. And it's amazing, and I think Dean Smith said this, it's amazing what can get accomplished when nobody cares who gets the credit, and that was certainly that team.
You lose 3-0 in one game to Providence, 3-1 in 10 innings. In the other game, are you like most coaches, do you think back on those games often, maybe woulda, coulda, shoulda?
Often would be an understatement. The first game we threw off. They threw a kid by the last name Jersenbeck. He's at the University of South Carolina. We were seeing 94, 96 with a really good slider. I thought we did a very good job with him. And then we threw our number one day two. We got the kids back at the hotel. Everybody was all in. They knew the plan. They knew what we were getting ready to go into. And we were right there. We really felt if we could get to game three, we had them where we wanted them. Just late, we made a costly mistake. But, man, just the atmosphere, and I think Richard can tell you the same thing, is the atmosphere in a state championship game just is electric. And for me, I always tell our kids, I was a quarterback at East Carteret and of course, played baseball under Gary Chadwick, played football under Tom Frazier. There are two places, in my opinion, that kids can just really get to know each other and really look each other's in the eye and challenge each other. To me, the number one place is the huddle. I don't think anybody does that anymore. Richard, I'm sure y'all don't huddle, but I remember, getting in the huddle there at East Carteret and looking guys in the eye and just kind of, challenging each other. And then, the dugout's another place. You can have several different things going on. The average dugout can have several things going on. You've got one that's having a good game. You've got another one that's not having a very good game. Adversity's hitting. But one of the things that I challenged our parents and just let them know in our parent meeting that year, and we've done it ever since, is I can't tell you how good we're going to be, but I can tell you we're going to have a really good locker room. We're going to have a really good dugout. We're going to love on each other. And, those are the things that I remember from that not conference championship, but that state championship game is, I had a sophomore we brought up that was a catcher that was coaching the starting catcher that was going on to play college baseball the next year because he thought the first base coach was stealing his signals. And I remember looking at him down there, and he was showing him what to do and whatnot. And, man, it's a beautiful thing when you got kids coaching each other.
Carteret County Speedway hosts Bluegrass at the Beach October 20th and 21st with performances from Rhonda Vincent and The Rage. plus the Coastal Ramblers Band, Poe Ramblin' Boys, Lorraine Jordan and Carolina Road, and the Clyde Maddox and Garrett Newton Bluegrass Band. 1- and 2-day passes are available. Save money and get your advance tickets online now. Camp spots are also available. Bluegrass at the Beach, October 20th and 21st. More details on Facebook and advance tickets at CarteretSpeedway.com.
Richard, Jeff was telling us about his experience in the state championship games. Like you said, you've been there 6 times. 4 of those could have gone either way. They've been one-score games. You lost to East Forsyth by 7. You lost to Harding University by 8. You lost to Richmond by 3. Lost to J.H. Rose by 2. I'll ask you the same thing I asked him. How often do you think about those games and woulda, coulda, shoulda?
There's definitely quite a few woulda, coulda, shoulda in those games. And the one that really haunts me is the one we lost to Richmond. We literally were 1 first down from winning the game, and my running back quarterback fumbled the exchange and gave Richmond the ball, and they went down and scored on us. We were 1 first down from taking knees, and that one haunts me. And the poor kid that fumbled, he hadn't fumbled all year, and fumbled in the state championship game at the biggest moment of his life, and at that time, and so that was heartbreaking. I really felt bad for the kid, and obviously felt bad for the team. You're a little bit like Dan Marino. You always think you're going to get back, and have another shot. And I've been blessed to get back a few times. And Jeff was talking about the great players that he's had to compete against in that state championship game. And sometimes you get to that game and the other teams just got better dudes. And you do the best you can. And the East Forsyth game, we were up in that game in the fourth quarter. And that game, we had no business. We were 5-5 during the regular season that year. And Jeff was talking about a great locker room. Well, that was a group of guys that just kind of started believing in each other. And next thing you know, we string 5 wins in a row in the playoffs. In fact, I think we beat 4 conference championships on their own field going to the state championship game that year. And ended up playing East Forsyth. We had no business on the field with them. And somehow we get to the fourth quarter and we're winning. And we ended up losing. They kind of ran a trick play on us and beat us. But, there's been some definite woulda, coulda, shouldas, but at the end of the day, there were great experiences. There is, I will tell you, and I'm not wanting sympathy by any means, I will tell you the last one I played in, I told my wife, I was like, part of me don't even want to play it because if I lose it, I've lost 6. I'm like a laughing stock. And of course, my wife's like, the bottom line is you're in the game, and not many people can say that they've done that. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good, but it really 100%. Don't help when you lose them games. They tend to stick with you a little bit.
Jeff, you all beat Fuquay Varina to get to the state championship. They knocked you out of the playoffs 2 of the previous 4 years. Is that your biggest rival in the playoffs, and who's y'all's biggest rival in the regular season?
Well, in the playoffs, high school baseball in North Carolina, especially on the 4A level, and honestly all the way through 1A to high school baseball is just really tough. It's a game of series. You're in the best of 3. Last year we thought we had a really good team. We're hosting, Corinth Holders here. We're seeing a kid going to LSU. It's just really tough. But Fuquay has kind of been right there. Milton Center built an unbelievable program. It's kind of funny as a high school baseball player. I'm over in playing third base, and I think it was our senior year. We played Fuquay. I meet this guy. I thought, man, he is a really cool coach, and it was Milton Center. And so now I'm getting to coach against him. I remember going down to Hoggard, taking our team down to Hoggard, playing a really good team there. First time I had ever met Jeep St. Clair, or St. Ledger, who was an unbelievable coach at Hoggard, was down at the Seashell Invitational that Gary Chadwick used to take us to. So playing such good teams, and the deeper you go, it just gets better and better. But honestly, in our conference, when I first got here, Scotland and Richmond was absolutely the standard. They had an unbelievable program, and I always wanted to model our programs like that, and so as we've moved forward, the work and the effort has been put through. Now it's kind of us top 3, going at it in our conference. But now you throw Lee County in there, who's got a kid going to Carolina. You got Southern Lee in the league now, who's got a kid going to Liberty. Night in and night out, you're going to see a Division I pitcher in our league. So getting to where we get on a yearly basis is an absolute grind during our year, and I think Richard can tell you the same thing in football. This league is very good in baseball, basketball, and football. I think it stacks up with most. So for us to be able to play who we play night in and night out, I think it shows when Richard said they knocked off 4 or 5 conference champions. I think our league probably prepared him to get as far as it's done.
No doubt. Jeff brings up a name from the past. Jeep St. Ledger gave me my first job. I was the JV baseball coach at Hoggard High School in 1991 when I was student teaching. And Jeep was a great coach, and like you said, they had a great program. So that was pretty cool being the JV baseball coach there for a semester.
I feel like a lot of years has come down to you all in Richmond in the football conference. Richard, has that been y'all's nemesis? And now I guess Pinecrest has kind of come along.
I'll be honest with you. When you're at Scotland, for a long time, the only thing they cared about is did you beat Richmond? When in fact, when I first interviewed for the job, they didn't even want to tell me. They just won a state championship, and they were like, when I went to interview, they wanted to tell me about the fact that they beat Richmond because they had lost to them 18 years in a row. Or 18 times in a row. And so I was like, man, that's something else. I think you could go 1-10 around here, and as long as you beat Richmond, they'd be pretty happy. But the problem is beating Richmond's an awful difficult task. But recently, it's like Jeff said, Pinecrest has really come on strong. They got a great program over there now, and they do have they got 2,400 people in the school building. We got about 1,400 at Scotland right now. So it is a little bit daunting sometimes when we roll. Like we're going to have about 45 with our little 8-quarter kids on Friday night, and he's going to be over there with about 75 of them standing there. But at the end of the day, only 22 of them can play. But it is, I'd say, recently it has been us, Pinecrest, and Richmond. And the fact that Pinecrest has got the best of us the last 5 years or however many in a row it is, they've almost become our bigger rivalry recently.
Another thing y'all have in common is the number of kids that y'all have sent to college on scholarships for athletics. I'm sure the numbers are staggering, and the notables, names we might recognize, are as well. Richard, we'll start with you. So how many kids do you know off the top of your head, the number you sent to college, and tell us some of the big names that we've seen?
I definitely don't know the number. I definitely know that there's been some. Obviously, Zamir White, who played at Georgia, now is playing for the Raiders. I got another kid named Dominic Davis that's playing for the Cincinnati Bengals right now that played here for me at Scotland. When I was at Britt, I had Xavier Nixon, who played at the University of Florida, then played with the Indianapolis Colts for a time period. Brandon G., who played at Wake and then played for the Cincinnati Bengals for about 5 or 6 years. Had another kid named Marcus Morrell, 2-time All-American at App State, won a couple national championships. In fact, was the SoCon Player of the Year. He ended up playing for the Jets for 4 or 5 years. And I've had a bunch. Somebody's going to call me and say, Coach, you forgot about so-and-so and so-and-so. But, I've been blessed to coach a lot of really great players. You don't win games without great players and great assistant coaches. So, I've been blessed to send a lot of kids to college. And, I got probably 4, 5, 6, 7 playing collegiately right now from the Division III all the way up to Division I football. So it's a blessing to have those guys, and they all have one thing in common. The ones that make it had tremendous work ethic and great character, and those things that really I can't coach. It's just those kids were raised right, and they were a blessing to be a part of my life, at least temporarily.
I can say that when Richard took the job at Scotland County, the story that was written on him about starting Jack Britt from scratch in the 12 years there, 75 players had signed college scholarships. So that's just half the time that's been half the time you've been coaching, and to the point where you were the subject of a feature in USA Today. The title of it was Talent Guru. So I'm assuming you've probably done that many at Scotland as well. And Jeff,
we probably had close to that many in the 12 years since I've been here, probably. Which is, when you say it like that, it is an amazing number. And again, it's just been a blessing.
And Jeff, I know your numbers are similar.
I think that we've sent probably close to 45 kids play college baseball. When we first got here, Pinecrest had won 5 games. So it was a little daunting as we took over, but we got a kid that came in the program. His name was Seth Manus, and he was a game changer for us. Seth was just an unbelievable pitcher and infielder for us. We sent him to East Carolina. I was a Pirate, played at ECU, so for him to go to East Carolina was a very proud moment for us. Seth set the all-time wins record at East Carolina his senior year as a pitcher, starting pitcher. Matter of fact, 2 weeks, Tiffany and I are going down to see him get inducted to the Hall of Fame at East Carolina. So that's a big moment for us. And then when you stay in a community and you're right here, I mean, Tiffany and I live 12 minutes from the school. We're constantly watching the little leaguers come through, and we saw another kid coming. And we watched him as a 9-year-old and knew we had a good one coming. His name was Dylan Maples, was committed to Carolina, ended up going in the draft. I remember when Scout called, Tiffany and I were coming back from a Zack Brown concert in Charlotte. I got his phone call, and it was Cub Scout wanted to know, did I think Dylan Maples was signed for $2 million? And I almost run off the road. Some of these kids and the money that they're making is really cool. But he was Gatorade Player of the Year. We had James Baldwin III, who his dad was White Sox All-Star, played an All-Star game, pitched there for the White Sox. James went to the Dodgers. We've had kids that go to Francis Marion. Taylor Norfleet set the all-time RBI record as a freshman. Nick Pry, who was, in my opinion, one of the things that I do is I kind of nickname them. I had a kid by the name of Nick Pry, the ultimate leader. I mean, and Richard can tell you a little bit about Nick. He also was a quarterback, but he's the ultimate leader in our program. In my years here, he went to Carolina and pitched there. And then we've sent Seth Cadell to ECU, starting catcher there. And now we got Colby Wallace at ECU. So, man, those kids, you look back, and those kids are the ones that are the foundation. You don't necessarily win with those guys. They are the foundation, and then it's them bringing everybody up around them. And we've been very blessed to have really good players here.
I'm Ryan Kelly.
I'm Lynn Schultz.
And we're the hosts of the Senior Moment podcast.
Each week we bring you conversations with experts right here in our community about the common and uncommon challenges facing our aging population and caregivers.
We discuss the challenges of caring for a loved one with dementia, as well as the importance of health planning, family history, and much more.
Join us every week for Senior Moment, streaming now on Spotify, YouTube, and at CarolinaCoastOnline.com.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Paylor, college baseball umpire, and you are listening to Paper Boys Podcast.
Jeff, your dad, Tom Hewitt, kind of a legend in Carteret County. He was an assistant on that 1959 state championship Beaufort Sea Dog team. Him and Jimmy Fodry helping Curtis Lancaster bring a state title back to Beaufort. Tell us about the influence your dad had on you as not only a person, but as an athlete and a coach.
Well, I tell everybody my dad was my first coach, and I think maybe we all had a coach like this. I remember down at Beaufort Little League, my dad was coaching the Elks. Richard, did you play for the Elks?
No, I didn't play for the Elks. I did. I ended up playing. I didn't move to Carteret County until my 7th grade year, so I ended up playing for the Beaufort Sea Dogs. Was my first Beaufort team.
Yeah, I remember the Sea Dogs.
Bill Springle.
That was on the bigger field.
Yeah, that was on the bigger field. That's what I'm saying. We were on the big field by the time I moved here in 7th grade.
Oh, we tell everybody, Lewis Jones, a bunch of the guys that played on the Elks, it was like a legacy. It was the New York Yankees of Little League Baseball. But my dad, he'd hit ground balls to us, and he'd start over there at first and lightly hit a ground ball to first and second, and I'd be at shortstop, and he'd come out of his penny loafers trying to hit one through me. And he's always, prepared me to be a worker, and, always made sure that I was in the weight room. And, there was a lot of times that I wanted to be out in the boat, and, going to Shackford, going to the Cape, but, he made sure that I was in the weight room. Now I look back at it, and, it's been a blessing to have that type of work ethic. He certainly gave me that type of work ethic. My dad coached a lot of Pop Warner teams there too. I remember going to North River and picking up so many players going around Beaufort and picking up players to bring back. Richard, you remember Willie Atkins?
Oh, absolutely.
Big Willie. Gerald Merle and all those guys, we pick those guys up and bring them back because one of the things my dad didn't want was them to overeat in the course of the day and then to go down to Freedom Park and weigh them in, and then they couldn't play, so he kept them right there at the house with us. So there was one time that Willie Atkins, the week before, he didn't come to the house, and they weighed him, and Willie was just an unbelievable football player. And he was overweight and couldn't play, and we lost. And I was just the water boy on the team, and Dad took us over to we went and picked Willie up. Dad took us over to the Gold's Gym in Moorhead, where I think the Tight Lines Brewery is now, around there, and put Willie in a sauna just so he would lose weight. And I remember Willie looking out this little porthole, and he was like, "Son, take your shoes off, get in there with him." I think I was 8 years old at the time. There's so many stories. I remember going to pick the guys up, and look, we didn't have a truck. We had this old green car that was called Green Betsy, old Betsy. And we would go, and there was kids in the trunk, there was kids in the back seat, there was kids in the front seat, and I was mingled in there somewhere. But just having those guys around our house was an unbelievable blessing to me because, man, I could look up to those guys, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an athlete, and I wanted to be a coach. So those were certainly some of the good times for me. And to be able to go to East Carteret and see the berm back there behind the east side of the end zone is really cool.
How about you, Richard? Who were some of your biggest influences, both as an athlete and your early years of coaching?
Well, I had some of those same experiences as Jeff. My dad was my baseball coach growing up in Little League, and much like Jeff said, he'd hit it kind of easy to everybody else, and then he'd hit tracer bullets at me. And, of course, if the other kids missed it, it's all right, Johnny, you'll get it next time. But now if I made a mistake now, it was a whole different level. But you learn to be a little tough, a little mentally tough. But my biggest coaching influence really has been Chuck Lewis. In fact, it's crazy. Yesterday, literally after our practice, I told my kids at the end of it, I said, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. If at some point you haven't hated me, I haven't done my job. Because there were some times now I didn't like Chuck Lewis because he demanded the best out of me every day. He expected me every day to give my absolute best. And if I messed up, he was going to let me know about it. I told the kids the biggest thing you can be is indifferent to somebody. When I quit yelling at you, that's when you might as well quit because it means I've given up on you. And Chuck was like that. Chuck was hard on us, but he loved us and he was fair to us. And I will tell you this, he used to hit tracer bullets at Scott, and I was a catcher, so I used to feel a little bit bad because I had to listen to Mr. Chuck say some things under his breath about Scott every now and then. I felt a little bad for Scott at times, but Chuck was a great coach. Cecil Lilly had a big influence. He was an assistant coach, but he was one that you could go complain to every now and then. He'd sort of listen to you, and Cecil's a big Yankee fan, and so am I. So Coach Lilly was awesome. Gary Chadwick was young, and Jeff mentioned him earlier. We all looked up to Gary. He was a young, good-looking guy, and we kind of all wanted to be Gary. And
don't build him up. Don't build him up too much now. Don't build him up too much.
Don't want to hype him up too much. I feel remiss if I don't mention Jimmy Paylor at least once. Jimmy was a senior when I was younger as a baseball player, and Jimmy was one of those ones. He caught a little bit, played the outfield, but there was a lot of times we were in group work together, and Jimmy was always one that, now he'd rib you a little bit, but he was a team guy, and he was willing to help the younger guys, and I was one of the younger guys, not a lot younger than him. But so Jimmy was one that I looked up to as a player. Doug Garner used to be. Doug was such a great shortstop at East Carteret. He was one when I was in middle school. I was like, man, I want to be like Doug because he was such a great player. So those are just some of the influences that I grew up around there in Carteret County, and all of them had a big impact. Gary Lewis was my football coach. He was a great guy, and he really brought the love of football. My junior year, I'm not going to mention who coached that year, but I didn't enjoy my junior year playing football. But my senior year, Gary Lewis was brought in, and Gary kind of renewed my love and the love for the game, and so I really enjoyed playing for Gary.
I would be remiss if I didn't say something about Jimmy Paylor. I don't even know if my mama even knows this, but in my senior year, I got called to the principal's office. I can't remember what it was for. There's no telling. And I remember sitting in there in the principal's office, and I looked behind the principal when he was talking to me, and it was kind of like Charlie Brown's teacher, talking. I wasn't paying attention to him because I was looking at a picture that Jimmy Paler had sent East Carteret, and it was a view from behind the umpire, which was Jimmy out in Florida, and being able to just see that there was, that could happen, someone from East Carteret go on and do great things. And, that I'll never forget seeing that picture. It just sticks out in my mind that, hey, you can leave East Carteret and do great things.
That's right. You can get there from here. We say that around Scotland County, but it's true of Carteret County. A lot of times the kids don't think they can get from down east, Beaufort, North Carolina, and end up doing great things, but they can. And you can get there from Carteret County. And like you said, Jimmy was one of those ones that it was cool seeing him being able to umpire on the big stage and that kind of thing. So definitely somebody to look up to.
Richard, when you went back, I think it was a couple of years ago, and you took Scotland to West Carteret to play in the playoffs, did you deep down inside, was that your little mullet bucket?
It was. I ain't going to lie to you, it was. I told the boys before the game, I said, I did win the mullet bucket one time as a player. I said, but guys, we can't lose this game now. This is my own personal mullet bucket game. Of course, they were looking at me.
There you go.
They're like, what's a mullet, Coach? And
we talk about it around here a lot, the mullet bucket, and sometimes my players look at me like, what are you talking about, Coach?
Tell you what's a cool thing with that, and I'm glad you brought it up, is Dr. Way came to the game, and Dr. Way was sort of our team physician. His son was our quarterback when I was a senior in high school, David. He came to the game just to see me, and him and his wife were there, and I got to talk to them before the game. Obviously, he's up in years now, but that was just a great feeling that somebody that I hadn't talked to in 35, 36 years probably came to that game just in order to talk to me and say hello, and that really meant a lot to me coming back to Carteret County.
Is that still one of the better rivalry games you guys have been a part of?
Oh, the mullet bucket, absolutely. Yeah. That's like Jeff said, that's all we knew, man. We thought that 3,000-4,000 people packed in the stadium, and that was the it thing growing up. Now you love the mullet bucket.
Oh yeah, my dad took me to everyone I could ever remember, and I remember one time East beat West, and Coach Mason was a fourth grade teacher Gene Mason was a fourth grade teacher at Beaufort Elementary, and my dad actually went and made a hat and had the score on it, made me wear it to school, so I wore it in his class. East beating West. A good one was my junior year. I thought we had a really good team, and of course, here's the thing about it, and I'm sure it's like it is now. I mean, both teams, each other. You've grown up with each other. Let's just be honest. They've been to a party one way or the other. They've seen each other. They know each other. So West beats us. It was a really good game. I wake up the next morning. My dad got me up and says, go to the front yard and pick that trash up now. And I'm like, what in the world are we talking about? I go to the front yard, and that crowd from West Carteret had took all the trash bags out of McDonald's where all the wrappers were and came and dumped it on our front porch.
Oh, that hurt.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Fellas, thank you so much for coming on and being with us this weekend. Good luck to both Pinecrest and Scotland County this week.
Appreciate you having us.
Appreciate it, and go Patriots.